Okay, so I have no idea what happened, but everything just this is Porthole to Justice, and this is your host Amelia Duran. We just got cut off.
Hello.
Hi. We're back.
We always get hung up on by the they.
I know. Well, I really, I've been drawn in the spirit to read this Coagula book.
Right.
And I'm like, what is this?
Well,
I
highly suggest the movie too. It's actually pretty good. It's pretty raw pornography, really. But it's. I mean, I learned a lot. When I learned about Rome, I learned this in my parents' college books, like what they were taught in college, is that they had these troughs in their restaurants, and they would carry feathers. Like this was like something they did as one of their vices. They were just full of vice and sin and excess. They were very wealthy, and the Republic was wealthy, but it became decadent, really, and then abusive. And as all republics do, when you have one person ruling, absolutely, an emperor. That's why we got the 24 faces, right? Okay, so they would take these feathers when they would go, and they would have these big banquets, and they would have these troughs that were like, I guess, bathrooms. Like this was like the origin of bathrooms, kind of. And they would go in and puke in these troughs, like tickle the back of their throat with their plumage, and puke what they ate in these troughs, and then go back out to the banquets. Like that's like the origin of like plumbed bathrooms. I'm not kidding you.
Well, I don't know if you've ever watched this movie. You should watch this movie. It's a really good movie. It's called Quills. Quill? Quills. Quills are like the feathers that they used to write with, right? They dip the tip of the feather into the ink, and they're called quills. So there was this pornographer writer, I think, in the late 18th century or 19th century. I don't know. Don't quote me.
The Marquis de Sade.
Yes, the Marquis de Sade. That's exactly.
And that is who Camus writes about in The Rebel. And Camus is a philosopher. Yes, it's talking. Yes, so Marquis de Sade is a good example to be studied. Yes, so speak about the Quills, the movie. It's a good movie.
Yeah, it's a great movie, and I think it really captures the whole conundrum of the movie. Really captures that era, the antithesis of that theology or mindset.
It is. Well, yeah, and the theology that really was where the state if a man had some type of wealth that they wanted to extort that was singularly his, like Marquis de Sade writing pornography, where really what he was doing, he was writing what he was seeing happening in the elite and the monarchy of Europe at the time in what he saw personally. So he was writing about his experiences in what the sexual perversions of the monarchy of the time. And that's really what his pornography was. Mm-hmm. But he was writing it down and selling it to the lower classes, and the business, and so they basically put him in prison, saying that in their theology that it was a crime, what he was doing. It was heretical and it was repugnant. And yet the theocratic nation had no problem putting him in prison and then taking what he was writing and selling it for their own lucre. See? So they won't even, through the doctrine of discovery, they'll even take the sin and commoditize it, folks. They'll even commoditize the sin that they say is repugnant for their own lucre. Because remember, it's not taking it for the purposes of curing it to the theology of Christ. It's there to serve a purpose and be a slave to the Pope as the vicar. Okay? That is the point here. Mm-hmm. That is literally the point here. So they'll even enslave you for their own personal lucre and commoditize the failures of the state. And then they'll pay themselves. They're paying themselves for their own failures.
Yeah.
Institutionalizing through multiple generations these failures to perfect these milking processes
Did you ever get a chance to review that case that I tagged you in regarding the Marilyn Monroe probate case, the estate?
I saw part of it and I was like, well, this is clearly fraud. I mean, that's the first star whack. I mean, I've known that Marilyn Monroe was murdered since I listened to Elton John as a child. mom about her. So she was murdered.
Yeah.
Her parents are very matter of fact with me. They never bought the propaganda. You know, they were both raised by people who endured the Depression and the unlawful.
Well, I guess her real family is claiming fraud on the court by the Anna Freud Foundation. The Anna Freud Foundation.
Who owns her capita, even in death? Which it sounds to me, from what I know about it, she was potentially assassinated by the United States government, right?
Yeah.
For a reason, doesn't matter. You don't engage women in your wars.
Uh-huh.
You know, especially, I mean, she was. It's not like she was selling her secrets. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, they're caught up as a socialite, an object of powerful men is what she was. And she's still an object of powerful men. But who owns Marilyn Monroe? Not the men who made her a commodity that other men thought they could buy and owned thereof. Her face, her joie de vivre, her persona. What they really have a claim on is if they are perpetuating her imagery, her demagoguery in a defaming manner, or in a manner that the right people aren't benefiting from it. Because I assure you, Marilyn Monroe did not anticipate that she would go through the things she went through, and what I understand her life to be, to give it to a whole bunch of attorneys who eat from her rudiments. And I think that's probably the greater question there, is who's benefiting from what Marilyn Monroe gave to us as an artist.
I find the case curious, and I really like it because... you know, there is earlier claims of her being in a group home in the foster home in Los Angeles County, as well as, you know,
maybe she was stolen.
Adoptions and various.
Little girl, right? Maybe she was a pretty little girl. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, I think that I would want to know if, like I said, is the estate there doing any? Is it just paying a whole bunch of attorneys? What's the estate doing? Mm-hmm. You gonna tell me Marilyn Monroe had no will of where she, through altruism, it mandated what her money and her wealth was to be used for? There's no one's paying attention to what is happening in these probated estates. And probate is where they're stealing the kids. Kids go to probate court. They're being probated as property. These are civil forfeitures. It's kind of like when cops go take your money, or the feds take your money at the airport and never give it back. Mm-hmm. That's the doctrine of discovery. We are going to define what we seize to be ours because you've done something illegal to get it. That's how they're seizing kids. Mm-hmm. You committed sin to have a baby. You didn't ask the king. You know? People don't understand what the word F-U-C-K means. Yeah. It's an acronym. It's what my dad told me. You know what my dad told me? He told me some crazy things, and this was one of the things that stuck in my mind, and I'll be danged if he's probably not right. He said from where he came from and what he was told by his dad, my dad comes from English lords, is that F-U-C-K means fornicating under the consent of the king. It was a grant to have a child under the monarchy. That's what my dad said. I thought it was a joke. I'm thinking it's not now. Mm-hmm. My dad would say things, I'd be like, what? You know? and he, but it's like that little bit of truth because it's such an absurdity. It's funny, and yet it's not a funny. Mm-hmm. I mean, it is a funny, but it's a truth. Yeah. You know, and you go, and that's really what I find myself doing like every day. We were doing it earlier. Okay, I'm going to post online 2 things. Okay. I'm going to start probably a funding campaign for some of the stuff we're doing because we're getting ready to go international. Probably have to. Mm-hmm. And like I said, what we've done is we've put in a notice of a fraud in the judiciary. As far as I'm concerned, is in an administrative process, the Treasury would be mandated to, by our request, to investigate fraud on those Social Security numbers. We've asked for specific Treasury questions as to whether there are other instruments of trust under those Social Security numbers that we don't know the names of, because they derivatize the name. People understand they'll put your first name and like your name, let's say John Doe, be capital J, little O-H-N, capital D-O-E. The next one they'll do is capital J, capital O, capital H, capital N, capital D, little O. That'll be a different trust. Then they'll do, you're saying they'll do capital J, capital O, capital H, capital N, capital D, capital O, capital E. That'll be a third one. So they mix and match, and what's called, they poison the capita, the text from uppercase to lowercase. It's called a poison text. When you mix all capital Roman Romanja with lowercase, okay, it is called poisoned glossa. And so they can, by just putting something in a capital versus smaller case, or all capital or mixed uppercase, lowercase, they literally are creating derivatizations off the same instruments of trust in capita, meaning from what is you. So they've bonded our yous, okay, and they've issued treasury bonds on our nomenon, our pith, our essence of selfdom. And then they trafficked you with it. That's what they're doing.
Yeah. Well, I think we're working really hard to communicate this to the public.
I think they're getting it. I think they're really understanding, because what people all need to move to now is, that's not a bad thing. That's what our founding fathers wanted us to hold. Our capita. Our each and individual capita as the sovereign man, woman, child in this Arca nation, as a nation, a king, queen. You have an it. You have a corporate it of one under one selfdom, and that you don't have to go to the king or the Lord or the Pope or Caesar to sell your capita to the world, to your fellow men. So the instrument of trust is created. Now, the issue is, when that instrument of trust is being defrauded by the state, who has a mandate of treaty and law and statute to protect it against frauds on the claims, claims against those statutes that we bring forth as law. They're saying, okay, so you have to understand, they're saying that Clay somehow violated the law, to the point that he's able to be commoditized, denied all of his substantial rights, and to have a foreign state speak for him and say, hey, you have no rights, you can't talk, you can't witness, you're a thing, and we're going to say without a jury of your peers and any word, or being able to have to prove that your mother, father, or anybody did anything wrong to you, we're just going to take you and give you to another family that we created and designated as better, and we're going to get paid to do it. Okay, that's, it's that simple. So now is when those abuses are been violated, who's going to pay that tort? In equity, in trust law, in repository trust law, under the statutes, under the constitutions, both of them, the Commerce Statute, an at-law constitutional pillar of the Congress, and then the de jure Constitution with substantial rights. The law, the town, well, all statutes must comply with, and that by that law, no debts shall be paid for bonds issued against the full faith and credit, not in compliance with the statutes at large, even. That's how bad this has become. We are such a great nation, and we don't even understand how many shackles we're paying for frauds. We are tied down and screaming, and we still scream. We're still that divine instrument of free-thinking people. They have our patents seized. They have stolen.
Do you know, in the state of California, I read an article the other day, I think it was from a scientific journal, about the state of California has data mined every single child born in that state since like 2014 or 2011. I don't know. It goes back really far, but that...
It's not the problem of the data mine. It's what it's used for, isn't it?
Well. When I think of that, and I think of the data leak on Facebook, and the targeting, the information that was used to target single mothers and families on Facebook, and you think, and then I was reading that case about the DNA, and I'm just like, they're just doing it right in front of our face, right in front of our face. It is exactly what it looks like, folks. Exactly what it looks like.
Okay, it has an it has a purpose to it in the evolution of law. The real self meeting the empirical, incorporeal manifestations of self in this open field that the whole world it has access to in equity and commerce. Okay, remember, our founding fathers, in their direct intent, in the way, the purpose of this law was for one day, for you and I to be able to talk to someone or do commerce with someone from another state, another county, another nation, maybe even another world, and not have to go ask somebody else whether we can access the banks, okay? To ask them permission to use the banks. It's not even to ask them permission to use the banks. To have a go-between. That each man held his own capita and owed tithe to none. Born in fee simple. Was immune from claims of detenue, if you want to be specific. God, I was born free. I was born free. Mm-hmm. How did I get enslaved? I was born free. Did I choose that? No, I did not. And the law is clear, firmly established in the instruments of our own judiciary. Even in de facto, up until recently, you can't force men to be party to a construct against his will. That is founding principle of our faith. So if they're writing judicial bonds against federal statutes and state statutes, don't even comply with those statutes, but are repugnant to the central construct of what we will convey our credit to by compliance with our faith, that bond's a fraud. We're not paying it. But guess what? Somebody else is on the hook by law, by treaty, by banking, by fiduciary duty, by surety to pay us for what they've done. Not only for the bonds, but for what they have done to our children. That is the beauty of the they have done and we have done. Both sides. That's what makes it divine. Repugnance has been brought to the bar of law. Mm-hmm. The law. It really is Ouroboros perfected, the two pillars of our law. It is an amazing instrument.
The only thing is we the people, we can't sustain the level of corruption at this point. I mean, it's just, it's parasitic at this point. It's beyond. It's
parasitic. And now we know it's parasitic, and the parasites refuse to be anything other than parasites. So now we're going to tell them, hey, did you know we could turn this blood debt off? See, blood debts, which is where we're at, they're interfering with our lineal consanguinity. Fee simple, and fee simple means you are debt free by just your incarnation, by your existence. You owe nobody. Fee simple. I owe fiefdom to no one but selfdom.
We have free will. We have our inalienable rights. I want to welcome Brenda Clifford to the live chat. Hi, how are you? Anyways, yeah, we have these.
And no detenue means no one has claim upon our flesh, our incarnation. Uh-huh. How is states of men have put debts upon our children who never agreed to be party to their state? Just by their artificially and arbitrarily applied borders called nations of banking. I'm sorry, your regional banking law doesn't get to violate our full faith and credit requirement of the law of the land trust you're using, dudes. Uh-huh. They're hawking our land in bondage, including our children, to run the fiefdom and the rules they're pressing upon us within those fiefdoms. And we're not fiefs, we're fee simple. We have inherent sovereignty to this land and its inherent uses. We especially have inherent sovereignty to this land in its inherent uses, and can avert fraud when you have pressed some form of contract, bond slavery upon us against our will and knowledge, and have hidden through coup and just behavior.
We need mass consciousness. A lot of people aren't even aware that we've been enslaved to this extent, and we really are at that defining moment now.
You're definitely at a pivot point in the self-actualization of this realm. I don't care if you want to call it species world. Where we live in this bubble that we know of the rules are going to change dramatically, must change dramatically. It will not be tolerated. And we will not have a overseen theocratic nationalism oppressed upon us with guns and corrupt systems of judiciary that affirm that they can steal our babies and kidnap them, and that a poor, disenfranchised...
I would like to interject. I need to interject something.
Listen, let me finish.
Okay.
That a poor, disenfranchised, handicapped woman is so oppressed that she has to be able to find someone who cares enough for her cause and understands how she's been oppressed enough to do this for pro bono out of general principle all the way to the Supreme Court. Mm-hmm. This is $1 million case. Millions of dollars it takes to get the Supreme Court, people. Millions of dollars attorneys do this. They expect my wife to do that. To get her son back that was clearly stolen. This is a repugnance of our existence in the freest country with the rights that is the pinnacle of law.
But
they're not affirming
the two are not mutually exclusive. The Second Amendment and what they're doing. There is a mad push for them to disarm us before this critical mass of this knowledge, really gets absorbed by the people.
Just freedom of the press. Okay.
But you know what I'm saying? The Second Amendment is not that they want to disarm us ideally before that occurs.
Okay, and well, not only that, but let's just talk about the freedom of the press. Let me tell you what the freedom of the press is as a right, a substantial right, as a pillar of our republic. If you say you are press and are organized as press and prove you're operating in a press fashion where you're disclosing investigative truths to the people, you are not to be molested by the state, okay? You are to be left alone when they say, and even if they bring you in for questioning because you are investigating corruptions, something they're not investigating. So you're over here, you're doing a service to the people of investigative truths, even of potential crimes against state, and you have an unalienable right in that capacity as a servant of the people to not be molested even if you're getting paid to do it. Most writers will tell you they get paid very little to do a lot of investigation. Most of what true free press and the famous writers that have exposed corruptions in the state have done, they spend a lot of their time writing a whole lot of things for a whole lot of nothing.
We should join our cases, because my case isn't very much different.
That's what I'm saying. So what we're doing here really is free press in the judiciary. I'm going through the judiciary and I am documenting everything they have done as a criminal act, and it's on the record. It's easy to see. The reason why they have to, with a broad brush, say it's immune is because once they read it, they're enjoined. And then doctrine of discovery claims, they can't get out of it in any way, and everything they do is going to be seen as a fraud because it's brought forth in fraud. The only way to correct it is to give up the fact that it's actually a fraud upon its face.
And we, the people, need justice. We have to be pushing for justice. We have to be petitioning the White House. We have to be speaking out.
Restore the law that they're mandated to follow. Mm-hmm. This court, it's pathetic that it has gotten this far. It's very fitting that the Seventh Circuit, the seventh bank we've gone to, let's say, because they are the seventh bank we approached with the seventh seal. that they're the ones that have been pivotal in the orchestration and the pushing of the use of Rucker-Feldman doctrine to give states not only immunity, but pretty much impunity to the Supreme Court, for even in cases where a habeas corpus claim is clearly sat upon the bar. They have used the Rucker-Feldman doctrine, folks, to dismiss a federal, two federal habeas corpus cases for an innocent child that has been unlawfully conveyed and kidnapped, that can be proven on the record. More importantly, it can't be sustained by the state because they don't even have lawfully producible transcribers in their courts. They don't even have court reporters in these courts, for folks, and that's a mandate by state statute that this court have one. They can't even produce the lawful transcripts to sustain the kidnapping.
I know what we were going to talk about. The art, the nonprofit art organizations, the global nonprofit art organizations that are unregulated. If it's a product that's deemed art, there is no inspection or regulations through customs and so forth. So we were going to discuss that. Do you recall?
Yeah, we were talking about it was a website that we discussed on Facebook where there is a potentiality that they are trafficking babies under the ruse of live art or something in between the embassies. Remember, remember they found out. I remember when this first started being a possibility is there was some priest who was like going through customs or entering into a country, and they actually stopped him and searched his bag, and he was like, because they typically are immune from search. Okay, you have to understand there are certain agents that never have to be put through the rigors you and I have to go to. You know, I just watched a 96-year-old woman get molested by the TSA today on a video. I mean, she was really molested. That was more action than that woman had gotten in 25 years, folks, by this young black woman. It was bad. And then the young black woman used that as a false premise. She took her gloves and swiped them with bomb and drug it with a wand that is used to collect microscopic dust particles, and she put it into a mass spectrometer. So she used that as a ruse for an unlawful seizure to collect evidence to see if she was carrying bombs, drugs, or had anything in her immediate vicinity ever that would put her as a possibility of being put over in a room over there and have them do probably an oral cavity search of her. Which, by the way, I've been through a cavity search, folks. It ain't fun. It's a funny story, though. Someday I'll tell it. But story.
Oh my gosh!
It's one of those pivot points where you go, "Oh my gosh, there is a divinity in all things." You just have to look. I mean, it really was. It was just this. It's one of those things. But I'll tell you sometime. But I've been cavity search, where you have to do your thing. You can refuse the cavity. In fact, I went to the hole. Okay, when I was in prison, I've never been cavity searched, never surrendered, but I've had to do the squat and cough and the, all that stuff. I make it real vulgar, and then the woman goes, "Don't ever do that again to me." I'm like, "Don't ask me," So, that kind of thing. But I refused when I went into prison to allow them to give me a pap smear and to put anything in my personal business is what I was taught it was. That was what it was called in my family, my personal business, literally. You're not going to put a speculum in my business in prison. No, that's not happening. I went to the hole for that, folks, for a week. I said, "You have no business to look at my hoo-hoo." And I knew what they were looking for. Guess what? Then they took an x-ray and exposed me to... Okay. When you go to prison, you're put in what's called intake for 30 days. You know why you're put in intake for 30 days? They figure in 30 days, if you're a really bad addict, you're going to run out of whatever stash you had in your business. Or that's really what it's for. It's for a detox period. It's supposed to be educating you into your new enslavement, all this stuff. They do it under the guise of health. Okay, I get it. If you live on the streets, you might need to have a pap smear. You ain't ever had one. I didn't come from that. I come from being a person who owned my own business. I have doctors. I was like, I said, they wanted my release from my records. I said, absolutely not. You're not going to get my health records. So I kept the state from doing that. But I promise you, most people don't know that even in prison they have the right to say no to have a speculum,
Yeah,
You don't have to let people offend you like that and do that. That's a crime.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, seriously, I'm sitting here watching this stuff. People don't even understand. You got to look at what's happening here. The video on Facebook is them unlawfully doing a search on that woman. Mm-hmm. They basically took a chemical swipe of her physical flesh. I'm like, why has she got her hands all up in her junk like that?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she was all over her. And then she turns around and puts her gloves and wipes her gloves. Now, I didn't notice she put new gloves on between her and... You hear what I'm saying here, folks?
Yeah.
They used it to take a chemical sample of the powder products and things. This woman has been around and put it in a mass spectrometer. That's what they did, and they checked for cocaine, gunpowder. That's what they're doing. Those are unlawful searches and seizure. Those are warrant seizures being effected right there of the person and of your powder. Since when do you have to give a sample of the powder of your clothes without a warrant in any other fashion, any other place? It's just like I tell people, if Clay were 18, think about this. Imagine Clay is not a child. Imagine Clay is an 18-year-old who is riding in the 17-year-old, put this way, 17-year-old riding in the car with his mother. And they get pulled over, she gets arrested, the driver gets arrested, and Clay suddenly disappears from the crime scene of the arrest, right? And is escorted by order of a cop to a police station, where he is put in the custody of the police station at that time. Then someone comes from the county and takes him in custody and disappears him, and we haven't seen him since. Mm-hmm. That's what happened to my son. Does it matter that he was 3? Yeah, it makes it more disgusting. It makes it repugnant. It makes it, what? How are people not understanding that's what's happening in these child custody cases?
Yeah.
And then they wonder why these women are mental. Oh, well, she's mentally unstable now. Well, you think you kidnapped her baby.
Mm-hmm.
And they're doing it time after time. And then they actually have women. You're talking about these people operating, okay.
Well, they're not only just, they're kidnapping the children, but they're drugging them too. I mean, there's been...
Yeah, because if you drug become dependents under the doctor's titles of nobility.
Mm-hmm.
And then they can eat their need for their doctors. So you have a system that eats off people needing a state that's based upon you needing medication created by their industries under the pharmaceutical industrial complex. You need their esquires who tell you that you need to have statutes where everything's a crime, including talking crossways to a cop. I watched another video today of a guy who works for the railroad, which is a federal employee, that was harassed and unlawfully seized and arrested by a cop who was so about how he dressed him. The man was very respectful. If I'd been I've never seen someone be so respectful to a cop in my life. This party was like, what? He was clearly like, dude, I'm just going to be like this because I understand this is a misunderstanding. But let me tell you, that cop created constitutional violations, and he interfered with the duty of a federal officer. Those cops have no business stopping federal agents of the railroads who in their duty of the business of their, doing their duty. He should have believed the dude, but he had to come at him sideways. If that man is so scared in a small town that he behaves like that to a general public, a man doing his job he's got a big orange vest on.
Oh my gosh!
What's wrong with this man?
Okay,
what's wrong with that man?
I just got a case. Look, oh my gosh, this is never mind.
There's popping up.
Yeah, I'm not going to say it.
There's so many cases popping up. There's so many cases popping up. And I want everyone to remember that case citation I gave them. Demary v. State. It's a very important case. Mm-hmm. Because they affirm that these workers, that's a well-established fact. I think it's called the ex parte Epstein doctrine or something, where you can sue a state. And this is even in military fashion. It's Demaree, Demary v. State in the Ninth Circuit. case number 14207. It got decided, filed January 23rd, 2018. They affirmed. You got to go listen to that. It's even amazing. It's on the YouTube. See, everything that's there, they're doing the basics right. You just got these corruptions. You got these people that need removed. And, they're going to pay a price for holding the bar. But again, by holding the bar for so long, if they've derivatized our capita, that means that we've taken a big bite out of what we will take from them. Understand that? Mm-hmm. If one person has had their capita derivatized through fraud and instruments of fraud, the way they've done houses on the other side, 100 times, you realize how many bonds out there these criminal enterprises are on the hook for from their own masters? You understand that? I mean, this is a pyramid scheme cured. This is a Ponzi scheme where we bet that they were wrong in 1809 and that we would eventually prove through the divine manifestations, the manifest destiny of righteous men, that we could prove that there was corruptions within the states of men that were oppressive and criminal in nature in banking. Mm-hmm. They were eating the people. Remember, you have to remember, the Constitution says eating the substance of the people. Do you think he chose those words randomly? The king has sent hither foreign agents to eat the substance of the people. Some people say rout out, but it's eat the substance of the people is how I was taught it. So he's telling you, this is when we declared our country. This is our nation declared, our country declared its national rules. We oppose people who send foreign agents to eat our essence. That is a principle maxima where we said we are independent of your corruptions. So they already knew. They knew. They couldn't prove it. They couldn't track it. Mm-hmm. They didn't have negotiable instruments that were traceable. And it's taken the invention of the Uniform Commercial Code, of the civil forms, of the banking laws, of computers, to prove who owes us the money. Computers. God had to bring forth, God Mother Father, had to bring humanity to bring forth the instrument of computers to finally prove who is enslaving humanity in this realm. Amazing. Aha! Let the clouds open, come in, seeing angels, and sing, Aha! Come on. That's where we're at. Yeah. No, that's what it is. It's literally, aha! And sing. Sing, the world is better.
It's an
We have flying cars.
It's an aha moment.
We have no flying. Yes. All the patents released. All the misery gone.
All the templates. Traffic.
The
trade on the flesh.
Ouroboros perfect.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The Alpha and the Omega.
Yeah.
Remove unseen ledger of the corruptions of men that
Let
are
my
not
people
of
free.
God.
Let my people go.
Absolutely. Like I said, sunlight through the great clouds, painted by various wonderful men, including our very own Maxfield Parrish. And see.
I love Maxfield Parrish.
And you know why? He has the sunset sky of divinity. Mm-hmm. And the sunset, you have to think about it. I see the symbolism in all that is.
I love his work. Do you know who Michael Parks is?
I've heard of him, yes.
Oh my gosh, I love his bronzes. They're so gorgeous. But they're kind of they have his bronzes he also does lithographs. But
we're going to talk about amazing artists for color and transcendence. I have a friend that died while I was in prison. It's so funny. I went to prison thinking my dog. I was fearful that my dog would die, and I would not see my oldest dog again. Instead, my father died, and one of my oldest friends died, who is one of my mentors for 30 years of my life. And she died of MS, and her name is Jean Van Harlingen. And she is an incredible, incredible, incredible artist. who for the last 20 years of her life suffered from MS, which, as I have always felt, is a man-made disease. That she's a great artist for color and things like Maxwell Parrish, but she went from sculpture to movement art, and she did work with dance when she was at Tyler, and then went to digital media because she could not do anything. She'd gotten so debilitated, she would sit in her wheelchair and use her old art and manipulate it through Adobe and other manipulative, media programs and create new art with it. So she kind of and she gave it this human texture, because most people, when they create computerized art, it's all fake. She actually took her own art and twisted it and did wonderful things with it. So I always liked her innovation, just like Maxwell Parrish. It's our American cloud of aha. But we really are, and I've said this, and when I was in the Occupy movement, I said that this was not a revolution, this was a renaissance. Mm-hmm. My mind, I believe that we are at the verge, and I have said this since I started doing the more rebellious forms of helping and assisting the people of the Republic, I should say, is that we are in a renaissance. And so I think that people need to start, when we start realizing that this is a simple changing of the guard.
And I'm a Renaissance woman.
Right, exactly. And that we are not yes, we are in Revelations, and yes, we are in times of tribulations, and yes, we are in times of judgment. But the Gentiles who hold court without a temple are not judged here, folks. These temple, cult, bar, law, Babylonian statute, man law stuff is what's getting judged. Mm-hmm. People are walking in the nomenon, in resurrection in the flesh. I am the living flesh. I am the righteous man, woman. I am born fee simple. I'm a child of God. These constructs of born in divinity and in inherent sovereignty to the oppressions of the existing states of men, where I have a choice to redefine the state that I was born in, because that's what you have to understand here. They're trying to ensure that we can never redefine them, people, and their own state. They're trying to make it so we cannot define who they are. And that is not the grant of law they were given to operate under. Mm-hmm. It's really as simple as that. So we're at a renaissance. We're at a new renaissance of humanity and all that is of this realm. And I'm not going to argue what is or isn't. I don't care. I'm not having that discussion. Mm-hmm. It is what it is, and only God knows, Goddess knows what it is, truth. And so I'm not arguing what this is. What I'm telling you is all that we know in this realm is going to flip on a dime, is going to just be a pivot point, a great, grand pivot point of all that we know of this realm. But things should cascade very quickly to positive things. It must. What is allowed to be perpetuated in this reality, this realm, after this must occur, will change. We will not tolerate wars. It's real easy. If you're repugnant, you can't bank. And there are things that can be done. When they talk about we're going to do this or that, you can literally, if you find a criminal enterprise, you can seize and shut its access to banking down. Mm-hmm. If you can prove it in law, it's a seizable commodity. How hard is it to shut down shadow corporations? It's not. The banking's all there.
I have a question, Lotus. I have a question. Because if I recall, you and I had become friends right around this time. I think it was before, I think it was in 2015, late 2015? 16. Was it 16? Yeah. Okay.
Well, I don't think I knew you before I went to prison, so it'd be 2016, I think.
Okay.
Did I know you before I went to prison?
No. After.
I think it was right after. I think that we started talking January or February, literally, I think. But then we started talking as far as on a interview basis, I think, in August or something of that year. Yeah.
I think it was 2016, the beginning, around in there. Well, if you recall, There was a rash. This was before all the Pizzagate stuff broke on the internet, on the, all of that stuff. This was before. There was a rash of bankers that were literally either getting thrown out of their offices or shoved out of from tall buildings. There was 5 of them in a row.
Well, and you know what's sad about that, when you do that? Yeah, I remember they were international bankers. They were people that worked one of them was one that worked for the World Bank, if I recall.
Uh-huh.
Was an attorney for the World Bank, was suddenly suicided out of a window, right?
Yeah.
And what's sad is, we are taught, you have to think about this, let's just go back a little bit. We are taught in American history that the Depression was so tragic and so unsaid that all the rich bankers threw themselves out windows. Do you remember that? You know what? Back then, those banks were privately owned. There's a great movie called The Razor's Edge with Bill Murray. Wonderful philosophical movie, but it also exposes those families that were bankrupted by the false collapse in the 20s had personal claims. If they brought claims of fraud against the bankers, the higher bankers, because there was banking fraud in the banks above them that stole their family's money. They had to throw them all out the windows, folks, because at that time they could have brought a claim against them. This was something, it was such a phenomenon of the time. It's reported as a historical act and event that notes how tragic the collapse of the Roaring Twenties was. Okay? Because you know what was happening in the Roaring Twenties? The American statesman was gaining power and influence and control and garnering great capital for the people of America. So they literally brought the hammer down of a fat false bankruptcy and then threw all of them out the window. That's what we're going to find out. That's what we're learning by what's happening right now. Mm-hmm. History repeats itself. You got to look. I remember that. I remember one of them being an international banker dude. And that was the last one I remember when they hit that dude. Well, the LIBOR scandal. The LIBOR scandal was coming into being. And there was also the report of the 15, this is even before the election, there was the report in the British Parliament of the British government or somebody within the British government catching the United States Treasury under Obama with trying to embezzle or launder $15 million through the Bank of Ireland. Yeah. There was a lot of stuff going on.
And this was around the time that you and I became friends, because we were both following these banking scandals that were going on.
It's all banking fraud.
Yeah.
It's all banking fraud.
Yeah.
And our children are the primary commodity that they're all slinging on their banking table. They're playing roulette, literally roulette with our kids. Our kids' lives as things. And it really is. It's just a domino. And I like to point out when I say, "Hey, this is a domino," it means that from this act, stuff is just going to cascade. Mm-hmm. It's going to cascade. And I really want. The reason why I speak mostly is I want people to prepare themselves. I'm going to tell you, if you don't really start to entertain at least a fraction of truth in what Amelia and I speak to other people about in the videos I do and other things Amelia says, and other things our associates, that are working towards the same goal of freeing our children from this inherent state bondage, literally bond trafficking, is if you don't entertain, we're saying some truth, when it comes out, you're not going to be mentally sound. You're really not. It's just going to, it literally might hit people in some form of fashion where they can't function mentally. Okay, and we will have a societal collapse in that fashion. I talk to women a lot who know where their kids are. So that's the first thing you tell. If you know where your kid is, feel very blessed, because there are an untold number, a probably greater number than the parents who know where their kids are who don't know where their kids are. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm going to tell you. I think a greater number of people who do not know where their kids are that have been taken through the instruments of prisons or just. There was one woman, they just brought a claim. There was a whole bunch. There was a case. I can't say what it was. It was a private hospital that had stolen a whole bunch of young black women babies and sold them and told them that they lost their baby. They doped them up. So this even tells you, okay, well, are they doing cesareans so that they can incapacitate the women in their ability to reason logic? And you have to think about this in the way they operate. in constructive fraud and disgusting fashions. They put the woman under medication so she can't make decisions, and then contract for her on her behalf because she's bored of the doctor if he puts her under. You get it? So while the mother's was under for these cesareans, they literally were stealing babies and trafficking them, and they were told that the babies die. Then the women find out that they didn't die, and they brought a class action lawsuits against this private hospital. I mean, it's that, folks. It's that in exponential fashion. And it's been happening. It's been happening. And it's taken us years to come to, we've been working on proving these inherent corruptions to their theocratic nationalism, their fascism, through corrupt unions, titles of nobilities of state, and esquires and doctors and gentlemen. People don't understand. A coat and a tie is a military uniform of agents of the military. So attorneys are required to wear a military uniform into their temple bail courts. Okay? That suit and tie, as they are mandated by that forum to wear, that administrative mandates, they come in that way. That's because that's their uniform. Same reason when you're in a jail that goes by the old rules, that's called the workhouse. The jail in Columbus, Ohio is called the workhouse. The workhouse. You are required as an inmate of the workhouse while you're in jail to wear your schmuck. You can be in your tidy whities after, but between 8 and 5, you must wear the uniform of an inmate because you're considered at work. You know, get it? Mm-hmm. So they're charging the state for putting you to work and paying you for your for living in their jail they provided you. So it's all about now they're treating that's literally peonage by the very language and the manner they run the jail there. That tells you that jail started as a peonizing slave trade workhouse. Get it? People aren't getting it. It's literally right there before you. But we've come so far from where it came from, and yet the corruptions that ran it are still there. Now the statutes have proven it. See, we've become so enlightened that the statutes the law actually defines all of what they're doing as criminal. They just don't even understand they're doing it under the auspices of racketeering the statutes. And that's why
I always, I try to focus on, obviously, my higher self, my higher calling, and then I also try to not so much focus on the theatrics of everything that's going on, but focus on the criminality, that...
What does Richard Gere say in Chicago? It's all theater. It is a theater. That's where you put on masks in the Roman...
The world is a stage, right? All the world is a stage, right? So,
the world is a stage. If we're in a Greek tragedy going, ha, 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 comedy, a divine comedy, ha, ha, we're in this theater.
It's really an alternate reality that these people live in. Like it's
it's an old realm extrapolated to the point where it's ready to change guard. That's all this is. Changing who holds the crown. We're changing who holds the crown. We are literally officially inheriting the Roman Empire. We are Rome reloaded. We are the great Republic of America. We have corrected the abuses of the emperor. Whether all the instruments of state are corrected in a cured republic, I don't know. We're going to find out. Mm-hmm. There are vacancies in statute that are gross. They've been grossly abandoned by the bar union. Their vacancies in statutes are contrived. I have spoken with attorneys that look into this and say that there are studies done within the instruments of the law, the philosophy of law, that have looked into patterns of the system that are contriving these vacancies of statute to allow these inherent corruptions which are conveying immunity and impunity. These are attorneys that are doing their job, folks, that are not. This is going to happen, and once it has happened. It happened a long time ago. The law is just catching up to what was required of them in the law. I mean, as far as the corruptions of the titles of nobility, that was established in law in D.C. in 2014 when I put the writ of conspiracy proving the passage of the titles of nobility amendment by the de jure states prior to the Treaty of 1812. That is a changing point in law.
I don't think we should back down. I think we should be pushing
forward,
onward,
back down. This
upward.
Is divine. This is what our nation was founded to do. Okay? This is what our founding fathers, people are always talking about those enslaving white Europeans. Okay, well, most white Europeans were Irish slave, and they were enslaved. It's like there's the personification of what is Christian and what is Jewish and what is Muslim and what is state and what is this. There's corruptions in everything. Okay, all religions are corrupted.
Everything's been infiltrated. All organizations have been infiltrated.
And the instrument is divine. All that men do, good men do, and women, and the instruments and women in their states, the preponderance of them are for the perpetuation of the safety and security of the people and the creation and perpetuation and guarantees. Remember, substantial rights are guaranteed. They're guaranteed by a civil society that operates in commerce as individual nations, all foreign to each other. We came together all foreign. We don't know where we came from. We don't know if all of us came from the same place, but we all walk in this realm. We all walk in this realm in living flesh. And there are laws. We don't need states to tell us the basic laws of commerce or the basic laws that create states of men. You don't get to traffic babies. You don't get to steal babies and steal them for your constructs of state and enslave them and treat them as commodities to fund your wars and your constructs and your instruments. You may not, shall not do that by our law. And we hold the international negotiable instrument of trade called the Federal Reserve Note. And it's backed by our full faith and credit. And you've been using it since you commoditized our babies. You've been using it since you commoditized our babies and making us, the American people, pay a tithe. We ain't paying the tithe. We're going to ask for that back. We're going to ask for that back.
Yeah.
See,
it's intense. It's intense lately, but I've got to wrap it up. I've got to get going.
It's divine. Just know that even what people think is the ugly side of this is divine.
Yeah.
And that's why I send people to that, because then maybe it won't be so hard for them to accept what's going on. This is going to come to a better ending for humanity. We are going to find better times on the other side of this. Great times. Wonderful times. So I just don't want people to look away for fear of seeing what they're seeing. If you see what you see, fairly, you need to see what you need to see so we can move on to the better times, to being right.
Did you see that Facebook put me in jail again?
You're always in Facebook jail. They just delete people off. I've had multiple people have to refriend me. They just delete me they just go in and just remove my friends. Let's think about this. Imagine if the post office, because this is why I think
that's what I said. Imagine if the phone company just randomly decided to ban me because of something I said in conversation.
They just forget that in my company, but how about prevent certain people from calling you? And your friend's like, I've been trying to call you forever. I had to come by. You're like, well, I don't know what. Well, here's proof. And you find out that the phone company just goes in randomly and just disconnects your number to that connect number anytime they feel like it, because they don't like what you're saying on the line. I mean, people don't. It's just a preposterous. Look at the allegory and metaphor. Why is my son, who's going to be sick, was he seen any different when they stole him and kidnapped him than if he'd been 17? Why? There is no foundation of that except he is innocent and cannot defend himself. That's the point. I mean, look at the allegory and metaphor of what they're trying to overlay upon you in the greater, larger sense of philosophy and maxims and axioms. It's preposterous. It's preposterous what
and
they're
doing. The testing grounds is California.
Well, they're going to lose that. They already lost that one. But I do appreciate it, and I always love talking to you on Saturdays. It gives me something to share just crazy stuff with.
I know, crazy stuff online, right? Oh my gosh.
I mean, it's crazy everywhere, but it's also a time, these are the best of times, these are the worst of times, these are the best of times. We're going to see the best in humanity when we see the worst. We're going to see a lot of worst right for a bit. And I hope it's done quick. I hope it's done quick and clean. I want it done quick and clean. Like the French Revolution, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, let's swift, quick, and clean. There's people actually going to jail, folks.
There's no need for practice here. Yeah.
I mean, this is an absolute overhaul of the entire system. It's just massive.
Simply by changing where the duty lies to prove what they've done, to prove what they're doing. Mm-hmm. They have no lawful standing to have been claiming upon us.
So this is the direction, I think, the course we should stay on when pursuing this issue in these matters is the criminality, simply because
of the foundation of the law of equity in the common law. Absolutely,
exactly.
We have a right. These when corporate states, okay, think of them as no different when they went after the churches. If states of the territory have decided to become corporate and agree to the UCC and doing operation and operating commerce in the United States, they have waived their foreign state immunity, and they shall be held to the law, the letter of the law. Mm-hmm. When they contracted with the federal government to take Social Security and Title IV and all these funds, if they defraud those funds, they are criminals, and they are no longer seen as instruments of law or actors of the law, and they lose their immunity. That is the point under the second, where equity lies in the way our law says they are operating under their own statutes, folks, their own statutes. So this is going to end. Well, I love the forum. I love talking to you. I hope other people enjoy it.
I do too. I love Lunch with Lotus. It's been an extended version today.
Cut off. Well, I love everybody. Everybody, namaste. Everybody be blessed in their path, okay? Please think of my son. Wish him, wish Clay a happy birthday on the 24th. Send him all the wishes with all children. Okay,
and the children. We actually have a Porthole to Justice page for Clay. I have to look it up, and I'll post a link in the Porthole to Justice. But we have a page for Clay, demanding proof of life. So go and check it out. It's on Facebook.
All right, thank you. You guys have a blessed day. Namaste, Amelia.
God bless. All right. God bless, Ray. I love you guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So I am going to be, I'm going to be on 20 on 20 on the Zeph Report later. Well, let's see, it'll be like 3 a.m. in the morning, 4 a.m. in the morning, my time. And then I'm going to be on again live midnight Central Time with Jacqueline Conrad, and we're going to be praying for the children and families in the Porthole to Justice and protection of the 20 on 20 prayer team. So feel free to tune in again tonight at midnight. You can subscribe to the show for free on Spreaker.com. I'm also on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. All right, everybody. See you again tonight. Bye-bye.